nonprofit organization in the United States and internationally that brings settlers from all around the world and sends them over to the occupied West Bank to go steal Palestinian lands and then boots them out. It's called the Jewish National Fund, and they have a chapter here in Manhattan, New York as well. I previously interviewed a Palestinian Christian in Bethlehem who had her home taken away from her by the Jewish National Fund, completely bankrolling this. Here's just a quick 1-minute clip of that. Take a listen. The Israeli government will threaten your lawyers and your neighbors in order to find incriminating evidence or to manipulate the situation in order to acquire and steal your land.
If you hire a lawyer, they try using this lawyer against you.
This is her home. She had bulldozed.
Also manipulation with your own lawyer, also with your own neighbors.
This is a Jewish settler that was actively stealing her land.
Around, and those neighbors need to get their documents done. They offer them to come to them and finish their documents, so they are using also your own people against you. And they spread rumors that you sold the land many years ago. They try to convince people around you that you sold the land, so whenever you try to say the truth, people turn against you.
So that is Elise Kissia. I've talked about her before. She is going to be on my show sometime again very soon. But here's the thing. This Jewish National Fund, what are they up to? Because there are a few countries that have already taken action against the Jewish National Fund because people are beginning to recognize, wait a second, this organization is just going around actively stealing land and auctioning it off for settlers from Argentina and Brooklyn and wherever else. Yes, they get settlers from Argentina to go steal Palestinian land, and they find settlers that are very violent in order to do this, to make the lives of these Palestinians so insufferable that they have very few options but to leave. So this was posted not too long ago. Canada strips Jewish National Fund of charitable status after 57 years, forcing its shutdown after court rejects final appeal. In a crushing legal blow, a Canadian federal court has upheld the government's decision to strip the Jewish National Fund of Canada of its charitable status, ending a 50-year run of tax-exempt support for Zionist colonization in Palestine. The court's 30 May decision rejects JNF Canada's final legal appeal, marking the official collapse of its status as a registered charity. This charity in quotations, is grabbing settlers and allowing them to do the bidding by colonizing Palestinian land and branding it as some sort of amazing, caring organization for Jewish people instead of the political ideology of Zionism. Now, Dawn MENA, it's an organization here in the United States that sanctions violent organizations, actually submitted sanctions to have the JNF sanctioned by the United States. So it submitted an appeal for sanctions. This was back in January of this year. It says U.S. sanctioned Jewish National Fund of Israel for funding settlement expansion and fostering settler violence. Of course, you can guess that the Trump administration obviously didn't take any sort of action against this, but it goes to show that a lot of organizations, a lot of individuals have been trying to take action against the JNF, but because of their powerful influence in the United States, it's not working. Because of the Trump administration's staunch pro-Israel policies, they're not allowing that. And it goes on and it says the U.S. State Department and Treasury should impose sanctions on Israeli registered entities, including the JNF, for disposing of Palestinians of their property financially and facilitating illegal and racist settlement expansion and providing material and financial support to violent or sanctioned Israeli settlement and settlers. And what people also don't know is that the JNF has a lot of subsidiaries that make its financial tracking very, very difficult. And these subsidiaries will also fund extremist settlers to build outposts in Palestinian land and terrorize Palestinians. One of these settlements that is actively terrorizing Palestinians that receives support from the Jewish National Fund are the Israeli settlers of Yitzhar. They're actually next to my family's village in the occupied West Bank called Burin. The Yitzhar settlers are known as the most violent. This is not just coming out of my words. There's actually previous articles written about Yitzhar. And here's one article. Take a look at this. A Jewish ISIS rises in the West Bank. This is from Tablet magazine. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Jewish ISIS rises in the West Bank. They reject modern politics and their institutions. They want to return to an imagined earlier era of religious order, so very fascist. They are extreme fundamentalists and violent. What separates the so-called hilltop youth from young jihadis? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And the Jewish National Fund supports and financially backs these settlers. Again, its office in New York. To be a hilltop youth is to first disaffiliate with all establishments of Israel, especially the settlements. These young Hasidic-looking men and women make their homes out of trucks, cars, trailers, caves, anything suitable for a makeshift shelter atop the hills of Judea and Samaria, the occupied West Bank. They see themselves as connected to the land of Israel, not to any institution of the Israeli state. So these radicals, some in Israel refer to them as Jewish ISIS, and there's a great distance between al-Baghdadi's practicing of beheading, burning alive, and massacring thousands of people, and the violence of extreme members of Hilltop Youth. There is indeed a deep connection between the two phenomena. It's inseparable. There have been cases where Palestinians, young Palestinian, I believe this was back in the early 2000s, had kerosene poured down his throat and lit on fire. These settlers are so fanatic where you'll actually see them also attacking the IDF. Yes, you heard that right. Some of these settlers actually attack the IDF because they don't believe the IDF is violent enough. And these settlers are receiving financial backing from the Jewish National Fund. I can actually pull up an article here showing that. This is not just make-believe. Yes, there are incidents of settlers attacking IDF. Here's one. Mass Israeli settlers attack Palestinian villages and IDF soldiers in the occupied West Bank who are operating in an area and caused damage to a military vehicle. You can see here the settlers lighting a truck and car on fire. And of course, they're masked and they run around just causing mayhem and terrorizing people. And the Jewish National Fund loves this. It loves it so much because of the fact that by having these settlers go on terrorist expeditions, they are doing the bidding of the Israeli state by cleansing the Palestinians out of their land, making their lives so difficult to live that they have no choice but to flee. If a Palestinian has olives, they have tons of olive trees, they'll burn down all of their olive trees to make sure that they have no income. If a Palestinian herds goats and they have sheep and they have animals as livestock, the settlers will murder all of their livestock to make sure there's no income. And then they'll push them out to the next village and the next village. And eventually you have basically Palestinian South African Bantustans in the West Bank that makes it easier to build more of these settlements. That's all completely financed by the Jewish National Fund. So again, the Jewish National Fund is in the United States. It's in New York, has many, many chapters. It's international. And Zohran Mamdani, actually, fun fact, he introduced legislation years back called Not on Our Dime in New York to stop giving charitable status to organizations that are actively supporting settlement expansion in the occupied West Bank. Of course, it's still stuck in the New York Senate, hasn't passed. It looks like it's going to be something very difficult to pass. But Mamdani did bring that resolution forward. Now, it seems like it should be a pretty bipartisan legislation. Don't allow settlers to murder Palestinians and don't allow them to steal their land. There really shouldn't be anything controversial about that on either side. But the mainstream media, Fox News, has done a really great job at making Palestinians simply having some sort of dignity and living a normal life as a controversial idea, which is why now it's become a left versus right wing sort of thing, or just a pro-Israel versus anti-Israel sort of stance. So anyways, guys, that's enough for this video here. Again, if you found it interesting, please go ahead and click the subscribe button below. It helps my channel grow, and give it a thumbs up as well. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care. Bye.